Chosen one, why are you still waiting for permission to claim what God already released? Why are you treating Wednesday like it's just another casualty in your calendar of compromise? And why, tell me, why do you keep praying for breakthrough while secretly believing you don't deserve it? This is not just another Wednesday. This is not another loop in the wheel of weeks. Heaven has interrupted the pattern, and you were summoned here to hear why. Chosen one, stop scrolling. Stop multitasking. Stop treating this moment like background noise. Because what I'm about to tell you will either ignite your faith or expose the lies you've been telling yourself about your destiny. You see, sometimes God doesn't speak through burning bushes. Sometimes He speaks through ordinary Wednesdays. He sets a blaze. And this Wednesday, this one coming, carries a frequency that will either elevate you or expose you. There's no middle ground. For months, maybe years, you felt it. That restless stirring, that holy dissatisfaction, that whisper in your spirit saying, there's more, there has to be more. You've tried to silence it with routine, with Netflix, with busyness. But it won't be silenced, because it's not your imagination. It's divine instruction, and this Wednesday, God is done whispering. Heaven has been watching you pray the same prayers, fight the same battles, carry the same burdens. And finally, the decree has been released. Enough. The waiting is over. The preparation is complete. It's time. But here's what will shock you. You're not ready for what's coming. Not because you haven't suffered enough, but because you haven't believed enough. This Wednesday will demand a level of faith that terrifies your flesh and thrills your spirit. If your soul feels like something's coming, if your bones have felt it before your mind could name it, type in the comments, I feel it. Let the Spirit bear witness through you. And listen, before we go deeper, thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. Because what I'm about to reveal about this Wednesday will either be the key that unlocks your destiny or the mirror that shows you why you're still locked out of it. The question is, are you ready to find out which one it is? Have you ever felt like you're drowning in a sea of ordinary days while everyone else seems to be walking on water? Have you been lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if God has forgotten your address? Has your heart been whispering prayers that feel like they're bouncing off the walls of heaven, returning to you unanswered and cold? Chosen one, I need you to lean in close, because what I'm about to share will either break your heart open or break the chains that have been holding it captive. You wake up tired, not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that 8 hours of sleep can't touch because it lives deeper than your bones. It lives in that sacred space where hope used to dance, where dreams used to sing, where your spirit used to soar. But now it feels like a graveyard of abandoned prayers and forgotten promises. You've been faithful. You've been obedient. You've been showing up to life, to church, to responsibilities, wearing that brave face that everyone expects to see. But behind closed doors, when the mask comes off and the performance ends, you stare at your reflection and barely recognize the person looking back. The fire that once burned bright in your eyes has dimmed to barely glowing embers. The passion that once moved mountains now struggles to move you from your bed to your coffee pot. And the worst part, you've started to believe this is just how life is supposed to be at your age. Ordinary, predictable, quietly desperate. But what if I told you that your weariness isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of warfare? What if your exhaustion isn't evidence of God's abandonment, but proof of your assignment? What if the very thing that's been draining you is actually preparing you for what's coming this Wednesday? Let me take you back 3,000 years to a broken prophet sitting under a broom tree in the middle of nowhere. His name was Elijah, and if you think you've had a rough Monday, listen to his story. This man had just called down fire from heaven, defeated 450 false prophets, and witnessed one of the greatest demonstrations of God's power in human history. He should have been on top of the world. Instead, he was under a tree, begging God to let him die. "I have had enough, Lord," Elijah cried. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Does that prayer sound familiar? Have you ever felt like you've given everything you had to give, served until you had nothing left, and still ended up feeling like a failure? Elijah had literally moved mountains, yet he felt more alone than ever. He had seen miracles, yet he couldn't see past his own despair. But here's where the story gets interesting. While Elijah was having his breakdown, heaven was having a breakthrough. While he was planning his funeral, God was planning his future. While he thought it was the end, heaven said, "It's only the middle." God didn't lecture Elijah about his lack of faith. He didn't shame him for his depression. Instead, he sent an angel with food and water. He let him sleep. He met him in his exhaustion with provision, not punishment. And then, only then, did he speak. Your Monday night moments aren't evidence that you've failed God. They're evidence that you're human. They're proof that you've been carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. They're signs that you've been fighting battles in your own strength instead of resting in His. But what happened to Elijah after his breakdown? God gave him the most important assignment of his entire ministry. He anointed kings. He mentored Elisha. He was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind of glory. His greatest victories came after his deepest valley. The enemy wants you to believe that your weariness disqualifies you, that your questions invalidate your faith, that your struggles mean you're somehow less chosen, less loved, less significant in God's eyes. But that's a lie designed to keep you from stepping into what's waiting for you this Wednesday. Your sleepless nights haven't been random. Your restless spirit hasn't been coincidence. Your sense that something big is coming hasn't been wishful thinking. It's been divine preparation. God has been using your Monday night seasons to strip away everything that isn't essential, everything that isn't eternal, everything that won't survive the fire of what He's about to release in your life. You see, chosen ones don't just stumble into their destiny, they're forged in it, they're refined by it. They're prepared through seasons that feel like they're going to break them but are actually making them unbreakable. The tears you've cried in secret have been collected in heaven's bottles. The prayers you thought went unheard have been building up like incense before the throne. The nights you felt forgotten have been the very nights heaven has been working overtime on your behalf. Every prophet had a broom tree moment. Every king had a cave season. Every chosen vessel had a time when they felt cracked, empty, and useless. But God specializes in taking cracked vessels and making them into fountains of living water. Your brokenness isn't your disqualification, it's your preparation. Your weariness isn't your weakness, it's your weapon. Because only those who have been to the bottom of the valley can truly appreciate the view from the mountaintop. And this Wednesday, chosen one, you're not just climbing out of the valley, you're being called to the summit. The question is, will you trust that your Monday night seasons have been preparing you for Wednesday's miracle? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Heaven keeps calendars too, and this Wednesday has a name on it, yours. You think God operates on your timeline. You think the creator of the universe is sitting around waiting for you to get your act together. Number. He's been orchestrating every moment of your life to lead to this exact Wednesday. Every delay you've experienced, every door that slammed shut, every prayer that seemed to bounce off the ceiling. It was all divine choreography preparing you for one sacred appointment. And you almost missed the invitation. The prophet Habakkuk received a word that will shatter your understanding of divine timing. For the vision is for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it. Did you catch that? Appointed time, not random time, not whenever you feel ready time. Appointed, scheduled, written in the eternal ledger before time began. But here's what's going to shock you. You've been living like God forgot about you. You've been acting like your breakthrough got lost in heavenly bureaucracy. You've been treating Wednesday like it's just another day to survive instead of the day you were born to arrive. How long have you been telling yourself that your time will come someday? How many years have you postponed your own destiny because you didn't feel qualified enough, prepared enough, worthy enough? Let me tell you something that's going to hit you like lightning. God doesn't wait for your permission to fulfill His promises. He waits for your participation. This Wednesday isn't about what you're going to do. It's about what He's already done. The table has been set. The invitation has been sent. The only question remaining is, will you show up? David understood this when he wrote in Psalm 31-15, "My times are in your hands, not in your boss's hands, not in your bank account's hands, not in your doctor's hands, in His hands." And those hands have been preparing something for this Wednesday that will leave you breathless. You see, there's a difference between Chronos time and Kairos time. Chronos is the tick-tock of your alarm clock, the relentless march of minutes and hours that makes you feel like you're running out of life. But Kairos is God's time. It's the divine moment when heaven invades earth, when the supernatural crashes into the natural, when what seemed impossible becomes inevitable, and this Wednesday is pure Kairos. Think about it. Every major breakthrough in Scripture happened on an ordinary day that God made extraordinary. Moses was just tending sheep when he encountered the burning bush. David was just a shepherd boy when Samuel showed up with the anointing oil. Mary was just going about her daily routine when the angel Gabriel appeared with news that would change the world. Ordinary days, extraordinary appointments. But here's where most people miss it. They're so focused on the magnitude of their problems that they can't see the magnitude of their appointment. You've been staring at your Wednesday through the lens of your limitations, instead of through the lens of His limitless power. What if I told you that every struggle you've endured has been preparation for this moment? What if every tear you've cried has been an investment in this breakthrough? What if every night you've lain awake wondering if God even sees you has been Him fine-tuning your heart to receive what He's about to release? Your Wednesday appointment isn't just about blessing you, it's about positioning you. There are people in your sphere of influence who are waiting for your breakthrough so they can believe in their own. There are generations in your bloodline who will never be the same because of what God does in your life this Wednesday. The enemy has been fighting so hard against this moment because he knows what's at stake. He knows that when you step into your divine appointment, it won't just change your Wednesday, it will change your legacy. That's why you've been experiencing increased opposition lately. That's why things have felt more intense. Hell is in panic mode because heaven is about to make a move. But I need you to understand something crucial. Your appointment isn't dependent on your perfection. It's dependent on your presence. God isn't looking for flawless people. He's looking for available people. He's not waiting for you to get everything right. He's waiting for you to show up, believing that He will make everything right. You know what breaks my heart? How many of God's chosen ones have missed their divine appointments because they were too busy trying to qualify for them? They spent so much time preparing to be worthy that they missed the moment when worthiness was being handed to them as a gift. This Wednesday, God is not asking you to prove yourself. He's asking you to trust Him. He's not demanding that you have all the answers. He's revealing that He is the answer. Your appointment isn't about what you bring to the table. It's about what He's already prepared for you at the table. If something in your spirit is rising right now, if your soul is stirring with recognition, I want you to write your name in the comments. Write it as a spiritual RSVP, because this moment has your name written into eternity. Don't you dare treat this like just another motivational message. Don't you dare scroll past this like it's just another video. You were led here by divine appointment to receive divine instruction about your divine appointment. The question that will determine everything is this: when Wednesday arrives, will you show up as someone who's just hoping something good might happen, or will you show up as someone who knows they've been personally invited to witness the impossible? Because what I'm about to reveal next will either be the confirmation your spirit has been waiting for, or the wake-up call your flesh has been avoiding. You've been carrying chains so long, you forgot they weren't part of your original design. Listen to me, chosen one. Those invisible shackles wrapped around your mind, your heart, your very soul, they have names. Fear, doubt, shame, regret, performance anxiety, the crushing weight of believing you have to earn what God freely gives. You wake up every Monday dragging the same spiritual baggage, the same questions that torment you in the dark hours before dawn. Am I enough? Will I ever be enough? What if I fail again? You've lived as if every blessing had a price tag, as if peace was earned only through pain, as if God's love came with terms and conditions written in fine print. But here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover: those chains. They're not even real. They're shadows of battles you already won, echoes of a war that ended at Calvary 2,000 years ago. This Wednesday, God isn't asking for your performance. He's asking for your presence. You see, the Israelites stood at the edge of the Red Sea carrying 400 years of slave mentality. 4 centuries of being told they were nothing, worthless, powerless. Even when Moses raised his staff, even when God commanded the waters to part, many of them still thought like slaves. They had freedom in their hands, but slavery in their hearts. That's you right now. Freedom purchased, victory declared, but you're still living like you're in Egypt. Wednesday is your Red Sea moment. You thought you were still walking through wilderness, but God says, this is the crossing. Every chain that bound your ancestors, generational poverty, depression, addiction, fear of abandonment, those chains are about to snap. Not gradually, not eventually. This Wednesday. Because when God moves, He doesn't renovate. He demolishes and rebuilds. But here's what terrifies the enemy. You're not just breaking free for yourself. When you cross over, you're carrying others with you. Your children, your grandchildren, people you haven't even met yet. Your breakthrough becomes their blueprint. The chain of not enough breaks Wednesday. The chain of too late shatters Wednesday. The chain of God forgot about me dissolves into nothing, because you'll finally see what heaven has been preparing while you were down here, assuming you were forgotten. Moses told Israel in Exodus 14:13, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Today, not someday, not when you get your act together, not when you prove yourself worthy. Today. This Wednesday is your today. You want to know why you've felt so restless lately? Why sleep has been elusive and your spirit has been stirring at odd hours? Your soul knows what your mind hasn't figured out yet. The crossing is imminent. The chains are already weakening. The prison doors are already swinging open. But here's the part that will either make you or break you. God is requiring you to walk out. He's not carrying you. He's not dragging you. He's commanding you to put one foot in front of the other and march toward your miracle. Wednesday will present you with a choice that looks impossible but feels inevitable. It will require you to act like you're free before you feel free, to speak like you're blessed before you see the blessing, to walk like you're delivered before the chains hit the ground. The enemy is panicking right now because he knows his time to keep you bound is measured in hours, not years. That's why everything has felt so intense lately. That's why old wounds have been reopening, old fears have been resurfacing, old voices have been getting louder. It's not coincidence. It's desperation. Because Wednesday, the God who parted the Red Sea, who made the sun stand still, who raised the dead, that same God is going to look at every chain in your life and say, enough. And when God says enough, hell itself has to comply. But I need you to understand something crucial. You can't cross over carrying the mentality that kept you bound. You can't enter your promised land with a slave's mindset. The fear that protected you in survival mode will destroy you in victory mode. Wednesday demands a new you, not a better version of the old you, a completely transformed you. The person who wakes up Thursday morning won't recognize the person who went to bed Tuesday night. Are you ready for that level of change? Are you prepared to be unrecognizable to your own insecurities? because Wednesday isn't coming to improve your situation. Wednesday is coming to obliterate every situation that dared to define you as anything less than God's masterpiece. It's coming to silence every voice that told you to stay small, play safe, settle for scraps. This is your Exodus moment. This is your Red Sea parting. This is your let my people go declaration over every area of your life that has been held hostage. The question that will determine your Wednesday experience isn't whether God will show up. He always shows up. The question is, will you show up ready to let go of the chains you've grown comfortable carrying? Because comfort zones and promised lands cannot coexist. And Wednesday is your promised land invitation. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. This Wednesday is a mirror, and you're not going to recognize the reflection. For too long, you've been staring at yourself through the cracked glass of yesterday's failures. You've been identifying with the version of yourself that got knocked down, passed over, forgotten. You've been carrying the weight of who you used to be like it's some kind of sacred burden. But God never called you to worship your wounds. Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not reformed. Not improved. Transformed. That's a complete metamorphosis, chosen one. That's the caterpillar becoming something it never imagined it could be. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think transformation happens gradually, like watching grass grow. They think it's a gentle process of self-improvement. But that's not biblical transformation. That's not the kind of change God specializes in. When God transforms, it's sudden, it's complete. It's so radical that even you won't recognize yourself. And this Wednesday is your metamorphosis moment. You see, you've been living with an identity crisis that you didn't even know you had. You've been introducing yourself to the world as your past instead of your purpose. When people ask who you are, you tell them what you've been through instead of where you're going. You define yourself by your struggles instead of your strength, by your breakdowns instead of your breakthroughs. But this Wednesday, that narrative dies. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" God is asking you a direct question right now. Do you perceive it? Can you feel the old skin getting ready to shed? Can you sense the prison walls of your former identity starting to crack? Because while you've been rehearsing your pain, God has been orchestrating your promotion. While you've been memorizing your mistakes, heaven has been preparing your miracle. While you've been practicing being small, the Almighty has been positioning you for something massive. This Wednesday will expose the lie you've been believing about yourself. The lie that says you're damaged goods. The lie that whispers you've missed your moment. The lie that convinced you that your best days are behind you. That lie has been running your life from the driver's seat, making decisions for you, keeping you comfortable in your discomfort. But here's what that lie doesn't want you to know. You are not who you used to be. The person who got rejected, who failed, who fell apart, that person was preparation, not your permanent address. That person was your cocoon, not your final form. This Wednesday, you're going to look in the mirror and see a stranger, but not the kind of stranger that frightens you, the kind that thrills you, the kind that makes you wonder where this person has been hiding all these years, the kind that makes you realize you've been playing dress-up in someone else's limitations. You're going to see eyes that carry authority instead of apology. You're going to see shoulders that were built to carry glory, not guilt. You're going to see hands that were designed to build kingdoms, not just survive storms. But here's the shocking truth that's going to hit you like lightning. This person you're seeing, this isn't someone you're becoming. This is someone you've always been. The real you has been buried under layers of other people's opinions, society's expectations, and your own fear of being too much, too bright, too powerful. Wednesday doesn't create a new you. Wednesday uncovers the real you. And the real you is terrifying to everything that's been trying to keep you small. The real you threatens the status quo. The real you doesn't fit in the boxes people built for you. The real you doesn't apologize for taking up space or ask permission to shine. That's why the enemy worked so hard to keep you focused on your flaws. That's why you've been getting comfortable with mediocrity. That's why you've been settling for less than what makes your soul come alive. Because someone knew that if you ever caught a glimpse of who you really are, if you ever saw your true reflection, there would be no going back to small. This Wednesday is your unveiling. Not just to the world, but to yourself. You're going to remember what it feels like to walk with divine confidence. You're going to remember what it sounds like when your voice carries the weight of heaven. You're going to remember what it looks like when your presence changes the temperature of a room. But here's what will shock you the most. Everyone else has been waiting for this version of you to show up. They've been waiting for you to stop hiding behind your hurt and start walking in your holiness. They've been waiting for you to stop being the supporting character in your own story and step into the leading role. The mirror of Wednesday is going to reflect back someone who doesn't need validation because they carry their own verification. Someone who doesn't chase opportunities because opportunities chase them. Someone who doesn't beg for a seat at the table because they own the table. And the most beautiful part, this reflection has been there all along. You've just been looking through the wrong lens. There's something waiting on the other side of this Wednesday. Something that will make every day you spent in the wilderness worth it. Something that will turn your test into your testimony and your mess into your message. But you must choose to cross it. You must be willing to let go of who you've been to become who you're meant to be. The question that will determine your destiny is this. Are you ready to meet yourself for the first time? You know what your biggest problem is? You've been asking God to move in your life while secretly hoping He'll move slowly enough for you to explain it to everybody else. You've been praying for breakthrough while simultaneously preparing excuses for why it might not look the way people expect. But listen to me, chosen one, when heaven decides to move, it doesn't send you a memo first. It doesn't wait for your comfort zone to expand. It doesn't pause for your family's approval or your boss's understanding. God is about to accelerate your timeline so fast that your head will swim. And I'm not talking about some gentle, gradual improvement. I'm talking about divine compression. What should have taken you 10 years of climbing, fighting, and proving yourself is about to be condensed into one moment, one Wednesday, one divine disruption that changes everything. The prophet Amos saw this exact phenomenon. He said, "Things are going to happen so fast your head will swim, one thing fast on the heels of the other. You won't be able to keep up." That's not a warning, that's a promise. That's God telling you to prepare for whiplash-level blessing. But here's where most people miss it. They're so busy trying to figure out the how that they miss the now. They're so concerned with having a logical explanation that they forfeit the supernatural acceleration. Why do you think you've been feeling restless lately? Why do you think sleep has been elusive and your spirit has been stirring at 3 a.m.? Because heaven has been downloading preparation into your soul. You've been unconsciously getting ready for something your mind hasn't even conceived yet. Isaiah 60:22 says it plainly, "In its time I will hasten it." Notice that word, hasten. Not delay, not gradually unfold. Hasten, rush, accelerate, compress decades into days. This Wednesday isn't coming to test your patience. It's coming to reward your endurance. Every sleepless night you've had, every prayer you've whispered in desperation, every moment you chose faith over fear, it was all preparation for acceleration. You want to know why this Wednesday is different? Because you're different. The version of you that went to bed last Sunday night is not the same version waking up Wednesday morning. Something shifted in the spirit realm while you were going through the motions of regular life. But here's what's going to shock you. When this acceleration hits, you won't have time to explain it. People will ask, "How did this happen so fast?" And you'll realize that the question itself reveals they weren't watching when you were sowing in secret, praying in private, believing when everything looked impossible. Divine acceleration doesn't come with a press release. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or explanation. It just shows up and rearranges your entire existence before your next breath. And that terrifies some of you, doesn't it? Because acceleration means you can't control the narrative anymore. You can't manage people's expectations or ease them into your breakthrough. When God moves at divine speed, He doesn't pause to let everyone catch up. This is why you've felt the urge to pull away from certain conversations lately. This is why some relationships have felt strangely draining. Your spirit has been preparing for a frequency shift that not everyone in your current circle can handle. But don't you dare apologize for it. Don't you dare slow down to accommodate people who weren't assigned to this level of your journey. When heaven moves without permission, you move with it, period. Write this in the comments right now. Acceleration. No permission needed. You don't owe anyone an explanation for what God is about to do. You don't need their approval for your breakthrough. You don't require their understanding for your elevation. This Wednesday carries a momentum that's been building in the invisible realm. It's been gaining speed while you've been gaining strength. And now, the collision between divine timing and your prepared heart is about to create an explosion of manifestation that will leave everyone watching, including you, absolutely speechless. The question isn't whether you're ready for this acceleration. The question is, are you brave enough to move at God's speed instead of man's pace? Because once this Wednesday hits, there's no going back to the slow lane of gradual progress. You're about to enter the supernatural express lane of divine destiny. You've carried enough shame, chosen one, enough survival, enough of that voice in your head that whispers, maybe next time, maybe when you're better, maybe when you're worthy. Stop, just stop. You've been climbing a mountain that God never asked you to climb. You've been earning what He already gave you. You've been proving what He already declared. And Wednesday, this Wednesday, is the day heaven says, come down from that mountain. It's time to receive. Do you hear me? You don't need to climb anymore. You need to receive. For 70 years, maybe 80, maybe more, you've been taught that blessing comes through struggle, that favor flows through suffering, that God's love must be earned through endless effort. But that's not the gospel, beloved. That's the lie that's kept you exhausted, depleted, running on spiritual fumes when you were meant to soar on wings like eagles. Listen to what the Lord spoke through Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. Did you catch that? Plans to prosper you, not plans to test you endlessly. Not plans to keep you begging, plans to prosper. But here's the question that's going to shake you. How long will you keep saying no to what God is saying yes to? How long will you keep living beneath your spiritual inheritance because you're afraid to believe you're actually worthy of it? This Wednesday isn't asking for your perfection, it's asking for your permission. It's asking for what Mary gave when the angel appeared to her, not with a list of qualifications, not with proof of her worthiness, but with 5 simple words that changed the course of human history. Let it be unto me. Think about that moment. Mary wasn't ready. She wasn't married. She wasn't expecting this assignment. She had every human reason to say, not now, God. Not me, God. I need more time, more preparation, more proof. But instead, she whispered those 5 words that opened heaven's floodgates. Let it be unto me. That's the sound of spiritual alignment. That's the frequency of divine agreement. That's the yes that moves mountains and parts seas and resurrects dead dreams. And this Wednesday, God is waiting to hear that same yes from you. You've spent decades asking God, why not yet? But Wednesday is asking you, why not now? You've spent years praying, God, if you're real, show me a sign. But Wednesday is declaring, you are the sign. Your life is the miracle. Your yes is the breakthrough. Some of you are thinking, but I'm too old. My time has passed. My season is over. That's not God talking, beloved. That's fear. That's doubt. That's the enemy's last desperate attempt to steal what God is trying to release. Abraham was 75 when God called him to leave everything and follow his voice. Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Sarah was 90 when she conceived the promise. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your authority. Your years aren't your weakness, they're your wisdom. This Wednesday is coming whether you're ready or not. The question isn't whether you're qualified. The question is whether you'll say yes to the qualification God has already given you. You see, alignment isn't about getting your life perfect. Alignment is about getting your heart positioned. It's about moving from I can't to He can. From I'm not worthy to He is worthy. From maybe someday to let it be unto me. Right now, heaven is holding its breath, waiting for your response. The angels assigned to your name are standing at attention. The blessings prepared for this Wednesday are locked and loaded, waiting for the sound of your yes. If you say yes to alignment, whisper it, or type, "Let it be unto me." This is the sacred agreement. Heaven is listening. But understand this, your yes isn't just for you. It's for your children who need to see that faith still works. It's for your grandchildren who need to know that God doesn't abandon His promises. It's for a generation that's forgotten that miracles are still possible. Will you give heaven the yes it's been waiting for? Or will you let another Wednesday pass by in silent surrender to mediocrity? The sound of your yes will echo through eternity. What will yours sound like? What if Wednesday wasn't the breakthrough, but the breach in the veil? What if the real move of God didn't end when the sun went down, but started when no one was watching? Chosen one, look at me, right now. Because what I'm about to tell you will either ignite the fire that's been smoldering in your spirit, or reveal why you're still standing on the wrong side of your miracle. Wednesday came. Wednesday went. And some of you are sitting there thinking, nothing happened. Same bills, same problems, same empty promises. But what if you're looking in the wrong direction? What if you're measuring God's movement by your circumstances instead of by the seismic shift that occurred in the heavenly realm? This is the day after the Red Sea closed, when the enemy's chariot stopped chasing, when Israel stepped into the unknown called freedom. But here's what they didn't realize in that moment. Crossing the Red Sea wasn't the destination, it was the doorway. The real journey was just beginning. And you, dear one, you're standing in that exact same place right now. Something ancient has awakened, something that's been dormant in your bloodline, in your calling, in the very DNA of your destiny. Wednesday didn't fail to deliver, it delivered you to the threshold. But now comes the part that separates the chosen from the comfortable. Now comes the question that will define your next chapter. Will you step through the door that Wednesday opened? Or will you settle in the hallway of almost? Because here's what's happening while you're questioning if anything changed. The enemy is regrouping. The forces that held you back for years, decades maybe, they felt the shift too. They know the door is open. They know your restraints have been broken, and they're banking on one thing: that you'll get comfortable in the in-between space and never fully walk through. Listen to me carefully. Exodus 14:13 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." But verse 15 says something that will shake you. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Even God gets tired of us camping at the miracle instead of walking into it. You see, there's a psychology to breakthrough that most people never understand. The moment the door opens, fear doesn't disappear, it transforms. It stops being fear of the problem and becomes fear of the solution, fear of success, fear of responsibility, fear of becoming who you were actually created to be. And right now, in this moment after Wednesday, you're facing the most dangerous temptation of your spiritual life. The temptation to normalize the miracle, to treat the opening as the ending, to celebrate the door without ever walking through it. But what if I told you that every day you hesitate, the door gets a little heavier? What if I told you that the window of divine opportunity has an expiration date? What if I told you that God is watching to see if you'll honor the access He just gave you? or waste it like you've wasted opportunities before. Because this isn't your first door, is it? This isn't your first sign. This isn't your first moment of divine intervention. And if you're honest, brutally, painfully honest, you've stood at thresholds before and talked yourself out of walking through. That job opportunity you prayed for, then convinced yourself you weren't qualified for. That relationship that could have been different if you'd had the courage to be vulnerable. That business idea that still keeps you up at night because you chose security over destiny. How many doors have you let close because you were more comfortable with the familiar prison than the unknown palace? But this time is different. This time, the stakes are higher. This time, it's not just about you, it's about everyone attached to your obedience. Your children who need to see what breakthrough looks like. Your bloodline that needs the generational curse broken. The people who are waiting for the version of you that only exists on the other side of that door. In Joshua 3-5, God told them, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Tomorrow, not someday, not when you feel ready. Tomorrow. The question burning in the courts of heaven right now is this: will you consecrate yourself for what's coming next? Will you purify your vision, align your faith, and step into the unknown with the same boldness that got you to Wednesday in the first place? Because the door is still open, but it won't stay open forever. And the longer you stand there analyzing, calculating, and second-guessing, the more the enemy is preparing to challenge your right to walk through it. So tell me, chosen one, now that the curtain has fallen on your old story, are you ready to walk onto the stage of your new one? You've survived things that would have broken someone else completely, but nobody saw the bruises on your soul. They saw you at church on Sunday morning, Bible in hand, worship on your lips. They saw you volunteer for every ministry, serve every need, carry every burden but your own. They saw the smile you painted on, the strength you performed, the faith you displayed like a trophy on a shelf. But they never saw you at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if God really hears you when you whisper into the dark. Chosen one, let's talk about the wound you've never named, the scar you've never shown, the part of your heart that bleeds in silence while you tell everyone else that God is good. You lost someone you couldn't afford to lose. Maybe it was your spouse of 47 years, gone before you could say goodbye. Maybe it was the child who never got to grow old, the dream that died in your hands, the future that crumbled while you were still building it. And everyone told you to have faith. Everyone said God has a plan. Everyone quoted Romans 8:28 while your world was ending. But here's what they didn't tell you. Faith doesn't mean you don't feel the fracture. Faith doesn't mean the loss doesn't leave a mark. And that ache in your chest, that emptiness that echoes when you pray, that's not proof you're failing God. That's proof you're human. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close, not distant, not disappointed, not disgusted by your questions or your tears or the nights you couldn't find words to pray. But you've been carrying shame about your scar, haven't you? You've been apologizing to God for bleeding. You've been hiding your hurt like it's evidence of weak faith instead of deep love. You've been performing healing while you're still wounded, pretending wholeness while you're still broken, and the exhaustion is killing you. Because here's the truth nobody talks about in church. You can love God with all your heart and still feel abandoned by Him. You can believe in His goodness and still question His timing. You can trust His plan and still grieve what wasn't part of it. That doesn't make you less faithful. That makes you Job. That makes you David. That makes you human enough to be holy. But this Wednesday, that's different from all the rest. God is done letting you carry that shame. He's done watching you apologize for bleeding from wounds He allowed. Because what if I told you that scar isn't your sentence? What if I told you it's your seal? Listen to me carefully. Every prophet who ever changed the world carried a wound they couldn't heal. Moses stuttered. Jeremiah wept. Elijah ran. Paul had a thorn he begged God to remove, and God said no. Not because He was cruel, but because He was strategic. Your scar isn't proof you're broken. It's proof you've been chosen for something only the wounded can carry. But you've been so busy hiding it, you've missed the power in it. You've been so busy explaining it away, you've missed the anointing that flows from it. You've been so busy apologizing for it, you've missed the authority it gives you to speak to others who bleed in silence. Just because you survived it doesn't mean it didn't scar you. But what if that scar isn't your shame? What if it's your seal? The disciples didn't recognize Jesus on the road to Emmaus until he broke bread. But after his resurrection, when Thomas needed proof, what did Jesus show him? His scars, not his glory, not his power, his wounds. Because sometimes the deepest truth can only be revealed through the deepest pain. Your Wednesday breakthrough isn't coming despite your scar, it's coming because of it. God has been preparing you for something that requires the credibility that only comes from surviving what you've survived. There are people who will only listen to someone who's bled like they've bled. There are prayers that will only be answered through someone who's cried like they've cried. There are miracles that will only come through someone who knows what it means to wait in the dark. That's why the enemy fought so hard to make you ashamed of your wound, because he knew if you ever stopped hiding it and started honoring it, you'd become dangerous. If you ever stopped apologizing for it and started anointing with it, you'd become unstoppable. This Wednesday, God is calling you out of the shadows of your shame and into the spotlight of your purpose. Not the version of you that pretends to have it all together, but the version that knows what it means to be broken and still believe. Not the version that quotes scripture perfectly, but the version that quotes it desperately. Not the version that has easy answers, but the version that has hard-won faith. The wound you've been hiding is about to become the weapon you've been seeking. The scar you've been covering is about to become the seal that authenticates your calling. The pain you've been minimizing is about to become the power that maximizes your impact. But first, you have to stop running from it. You have to stop pretending it doesn't exist. You have to look in the mirror and say what you've never said. I am wounded, and I am worthy. I am scarred, and I am chosen. I am broken, and I am blessed. Because Wednesday is coming, and it's bringing healing. Not the kind that erases the scar, but the kind that transforms it. Not the kind that makes you forget, but the kind that makes you fearless. The question is, are you ready to stop hiding your wound and start honoring your warrior? Listen to me, chosen one. What if I told you that every devastating blow you've endured, every crushing disappointment, every moment you thought God had abandoned you, what if none of it was random? What if it was all calculated warfare designed to destroy you before you could step into this Wednesday? The attack wasn't random. The betrayal wasn't a coincidence. The breakdown came right before your breakthrough because the enemy saw your scroll. You see, in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verse 12, the angel tells Daniel, from the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. But then he reveals something chilling. The prince of Persia withstood me 21 days. 21 days of supernatural warfare, while Daniel waited for his answer. Your life was never a mess. It was misread warfare. Think about it. Why did your marriage fall apart just when you were getting closer to God? Why did the diagnosis come right after you started believing again? Why did they fire you the week you decided to trust His plan? Why did your children rebel when you finally found your faith? This wasn't bad luck, beloved. This was strategic assault. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on nobodies. He reserves his heaviest artillery for those carrying the most dangerous assignments. And you, chosen one, you've been carrying something that terrifies the kingdom of darkness. That's why the hits kept coming. That's why the pain felt personal. That's why it seemed like everything good in your life was under attack. Because it was. In Revelation 12:12, Scripture declares, "Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." The closer you get to your divine appointment, the more desperate his attacks become. He's not fighting your past, he's fighting your future. Remember Job? Satan had to ask permission to touch him. Why? Because Job was about to demonstrate something the enemy couldn't afford the world, to see that faith survives even when everything else dies. Your suffering wasn't punishment, dear one. It was reconnaissance. The enemy was studying your breaking point because he knew what you were capable of. But here's what he miscalculated. Every attack was actually building your spiritual muscle. Every betrayal was removing people who would have held you back. Every loss was making room for what God was preparing to give you. The enemy thought he was destroying your foundation, but God was using every blow to rebuild you with titanium instead of clay. You want to know why you're still here? Why you didn't give up when giving up made perfect sense? Because deep in your DNA is a divine assignment that hell itself cannot abort. 1 Corinthians 15:58 promises, "Your labor in the Lord is not in vain," not some of it, all of it. Every tear was currency. Every sleepless night was preparation. Every moment you wanted to quit but didn't was you passing a test the enemy designed for you to fail. The reason you feel different now, the reason something is stirring in your spirit, is because the warfare is shifting. You survived the assassination attempt on your destiny. You outlasted the siege on your sanity. You endured the attack on your identity. And now the enemy is running out of time because this Wednesday carries something he cannot stop. Do you know what scares the kingdom of darkness more than anything? It's not your prayers, though they terrify demons. It's not your worship, though. It shakes hell's gates. What absolutely paralyzes the enemy is a believer who finally understands that their pain was preparation, their mess was a message, and their wounds were weapons. You've been asking God, why did you let this happen? But God has been asking you, will you let me use this? Because Romans 8:28 isn't just a nice verse on a coffee mug, it's a supernatural law. All things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. All things, even the things that almost killed you. The enemy saw your appointment before you did. He saw this Wednesday marked in the courts of heaven. He saw your name written in the book of destiny. He saw the impact you were going to make, the lives you were going to touch, the chains you were going to break. And in his desperation, he threw everything at you. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot that what doesn't kill you doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you dangerous. You're not the same person who entered that storm. You're battle-tested, you're warrior-proven, your enemy certified dangerous. If you know the last battle almost took you out, if you recognize the fingerprints of hell on your hardest seasons, if you can see now that the timing was too perfect to be coincidence, type this in faith. The attack confirms the assignment. Because chosen one, the reason Wednesday feels so loaded with possibility, the reason your spirit is stirring with expectation, is because you've survived everything hell threw at you to prevent this moment. You're still standing. You're still believing. You're still here. And that terrifies the enemy more than you know. Because if you can survive what was meant to destroy you, imagine what you'll do with what's meant to empower you. The appointment he tried to cancel is about to begin. You know what breaks my heart? It's not the people who never hear God's voice. It's the ones who hear it clearly, feel it deeply, know exactly what they're supposed to do, and then spend the next 6 months explaining to themselves why they can't do it. You've been here before, haven't you? Standing at this exact crossroads. You felt the pull, sensed the shift, knew something was about to break open. And what did you do? You analyzed it to death. You prayed for more confirmation. You waited for the perfect moment, the perfect feeling, the perfect circumstances. And the door closed. Listen to me carefully. Many are called, but few cross over. Not because God changes his mind, not because the opportunity disappears, but because when the moment of truth arrives, when faith demands feet, most people let fear dress up as wisdom and talk them out of obedience. This Wednesday isn't just another chance. It's your last chance to stop being a spiritual tourist and start being a kingdom pioneer. Because here's what nobody wants to tell you about divine timing. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It waits for you to say yes. You remember Caleb, don't you? Standing at the edge of the promised land with 11 other spies, looking at the same giants, the same fortified cities, the same impossible odds. 10 of them came back with fear reports. 10 of them focused on the obstacles. But Caleb, Numbers 13:30 tells us exactly what he said. Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Let us go up at once. Not next month when we feel more prepared. Not next year when the economy stabilizes. Not when the kids are older or the mortgage is paid off. At once. Because Caleb understood something that most believers never grasp. The power of God doesn't increase with your comfort level. But here's where it gets personal. How many promised lands have you walked away from because the giants looked too big? How many divine appointments have you postponed because the timing felt inconvenient? How many times has God opened a door and you stood there calculating the cost instead of walking through it? You prayed for this moment. You begged heaven for breakthrough. You cried out for change, for elevation, for something different. And now it's here disguised as an ordinary Wednesday that requires extraordinary faith, and you're hesitating again. Do you know what's really happening right now? You're not just choosing between moving forward or staying put. You're choosing between two versions of yourself. The version that plays it safe, analyzes everything, and dies with their music still inside them. Or the version that says, if God said it, that settles it, and moves when he moves. This is the moment where you discover which version you really are. Because Wednesday is coming, whether you're ready or not. The question isn't whether the door will open, it's whether you'll have the courage to walk through it when it does. And I need you to understand something. This door has your name on it. It was custom, designed for your assignment, your calling, your breakthrough. But it won't stay open indefinitely. You see, there's something about divine timing that most people miss. It's not just about God's perfect schedule, it's about your spiritual readiness to handle what's on the other side. Every delay you've experienced, every setback, every moment of waiting has been preparing you for this threshold. But now, the preparation is over. Now it's time to cross over. The Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness, not because God forgot about them, but because they kept choosing fear over faith, comfort over calling, familiar over freedom. Don't let that be your story. Here's what I know about you. You've felt it building, that restless energy, that holy dissatisfaction with where you are, that growing awareness that you're called to more than you're currently walking in. That's not wishful thinking, that's your spirit recognizing the season shift. But feeling it and crossing over are two different things. Crossing over requires you to release your grip on the familiar and trust God with your future. It requires you to stop making excuses and start making moves. It requires you to believe that the God who called you is the same God who will equip you. The truth is, you've been preparing for this Wednesday your entire life. Every test was training. Every trial was strengthening. Every disappointment was redirecting you toward this moment. And now you're here, standing at the threshold between your past and your purpose. Some of you are going to read these words and feel that familiar stirring, that divine nudge, that holy urgency. And then you're going to do what you always do. You're going to make a list of all the reasons why it can't be now, why it can't be you, why it can't be this simple. But what if it is this simple? What if crossing over isn't about having all the answers, but about taking the first step? What if the miracle you've been praying for is waiting on the other side of your obedience? This Wednesday will separate the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the walkers, the wishers from the warriors. It will reveal who's been truly waiting on God and who's been waiting on circumstances. It will distinguish between those who trust His timing and those who trust their feelings. The question that will define your destiny isn't whether God is faithful. He's already proven that. The question is whether you'll be faithful to what He's calling you to do, even when your flesh wants to retreat and your mind wants to rationalize. Because this isn't just about Wednesday anymore. This is about who you become when you finally say yes to the call on your life. You want to know why Wednesday feels different? Because heaven is listening for a sound it hasn't heard from you yet. Not your complaints, not your confusion, not your careful, calculated prayers that sound more like suggestions than declarations. Heaven is waiting to hear the sound of a believer who understands that their voice carries the frequency of the Most High God. Listen to me closely, chosen one. You've been sitting in silence for too long. You've been whispering when God gave you a voice that can shake principalities. You've been tiptoeing around your destiny when the Creator of the universe handed you vocal cords that can command mountains to move. But here's the brutal truth that's going to sting. Your silence has been feeding your stagnation. Every day you wake up without declaring God's promises over your life, you're essentially telling heaven, I'm comfortable with mediocrity. Every morning, you skip past worship to dive straight into worry. You're tuning your spirit to the frequency of fear instead of faith. The psalmist didn't whisper in Psalm 149:6, "Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand." He declared it, he shouted it, he released it into the atmosphere like a weapon of mass construction. You see, David understood something that most believers today have forgotten. Praise isn't just worship, praise is warfare. When you lift your voice in the darkness, you're not just singing pretty songs, you're shifting the spiritual climate around your life. Remember when Paul and Silas were locked in that prison cell? Acts 16:25 tells us, "At midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them." But look what happened next. The earth didn't just move, it quaked. The prison doors didn't just unlock, they flew open. The chains didn't just loosen, they fell off. Why? Because heaven moves on sound. And when the sound of praise meets the power of God, impossibilities become inevitabilities. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think praise only works when everything is going well. They think declarations only count when they feel strong. Wrong. Dead wrong. The most powerful sound you can release is praise in the pit, declaration in the darkness, worship when you're wounded. Because that's when your voice carries the most authority. That's when your sound breaks through dimensions. That's when hell has to take notice and heaven has to respond. You want to know why this Wednesday is different? Because God is done waiting for you to find your voice in the light. He's calling you to declare His goodness in the darkness, to praise His faithfulness when you can't see His face, to worship His power when you feel powerless. Here's what's going to shock you. You're not just waiting for the shift, you are the shift. Every time you open your mouth and declare, God is faithful, when your bank account says broke, you shift the atmosphere. Every time you proclaim, the Lord is my healer, when your body is screaming pain, you release healing into the spiritual realm. Every time you announce, my God supplies all my needs, when lack is knocking at your door, you activate provision. Your voice isn't just sound waves bouncing off walls. Your voice is a spiritual frequency that connects earth to heaven. Your declarations aren't just positive thinking, they're divine legislation being passed in the courts of eternity. But most believers have lost their roar. They've traded their lion's voice for a lamb's whisper. They've exchanged their prophetic authority for polite suggestions. Not you. Not anymore. Not this Wednesday. This Wednesday, heaven is downloading a new sound into your spirit. A sound that doesn't ask permission. A sound that doesn't apologize for being loud. A sound that doesn't shrink back when the enemy roars. When Jesus stood before Lazarus's tomb in John 11:43, He didn't whisper a prayer. He cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth!" And death had to obey. The grave had to give up its prisoner. The impossible had to bow to the sound of divine authority. That same authority lives in your vocal cords right now. That same power is waiting to be released through your declarations. That same resurrection force is ready to respond to your praise. But here's the key. It only responds to believers who understand that their voice is not their own. Your voice belongs to the one who breathed life into your lungs. Your sound carries the frequency of the one who spoke stars into existence. When you praise, you're not just making noise. You're releasing the same creative force that separated light from darkness. When you declare, you're not just speaking words. You're activating the same power that raised Jesus from the dead. So what sound are you releasing into this atmosphere? What frequency is flowing from your spirit? What declarations are you making over this Wednesday that's approaching? Because I need you to understand something. The enemy is terrified of believers who have found their voice. Satan is not afraid of your silence. He's not threatened by your secret prayers. He's not concerned about your quiet faith. But he trembles when believers understand that their praise is warfare. He flees when the sound of prophetic declaration fills the air. He runs when worship rises from wounded hearts. Drop this in the comments right now. I am the atmosphere shift. Let your voice break through whatever has been holding you captive. Let your sound release whatever heaven has been preparing to do in your life. Your voice is not empty. It is warfare. It is access. It is the key that unlocks Wednesday's divine appointment. And speaking of that appointment, let me tell you what happens when the sound of your praise meets the silence of God's preparation. Chosen one, there's a widow in the Bible who changed everything I thought I knew about faith. She's standing in her kitchen, holding an empty jar, staring at what looks like the end of her story. Her husband is dead. Her boys are about to be sold into slavery. The creditors are at the door, and all she has left is a tiny bit of oil, barely enough to cook one last meal. But here's what haunts me about her story. She had to pour first. The prophet Elisha didn't wave a magic wand. He didn't pray over the oil and multiply it in her hands. He gave her the most terrifying instruction imaginable. Go borrow empty vessels, then pour. Pour what? She's got nothing. Pour when? Before she sees a miracle. Pour why? Because that's how faith works in the kingdom of God. You want confirmation before you pour. But God is saying, pour, and the oil will answer. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You've been waiting for Wednesday to prove itself to you. You've been demanding evidence before you'll move. You want God to show you the money before you tithe. Show you the healing before you stop the medication. Show you the spouse before you forgive your ex. Show you the breakthrough before you take the risk. But that widow teaches us something that will either liberate you or terrify you. The oil only flows when you pour. 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 6 says this. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. Did you catch that? The oil didn't stop flowing because God got tired. It stopped flowing because she ran out of vessels. The miracle was limited not by heaven's supply, but by her capacity to receive. And right now, God is asking you the same question. He asked her, "What do you have in your house?" You say you have nothing, but I'm looking at your life and I see oil everywhere. I see forgiveness you refuse to pour. I see stories you're too ashamed to share. I see generosity locked up behind your fear of not having enough. I see obedience frozen by your demand for guarantees. But this Wednesday, God is calling you to pour first. You want to know why this Wednesday is different? Because it's the day God stops waiting for your fear to give him permission. It's the day he calls you to move in faith while the evidence is still hidden. It's the day you discover that miracles don't happen to people who wait, they happen to people who pour. But here's what's really going to challenge you. You've been praying for God to fill your life, but you haven't been creating space for him to fill. You've been asking for more while clutching tightly to what little you have. You've been demanding breakthrough while refusing to break open. The widow could have hoarded that little bit of oil. She could have said, "This is all I have left. I can't risk losing it." But instead, she poured it out, and watch this, as she poured, heaven poured back. That's the principle that will change your Wednesday. As you pour, heaven pours. Every time you choose forgiveness over bitterness, you create a vessel. Every time you share your story instead of hiding your scars, you create a vessel. Every time you give when logic says save, you create a vessel. Every time you obey when flesh says resist, you create a vessel. And God will fill every single one. But chosen one, I need you to understand something that might shock you. The oil stops flowing when you stop creating vessels. Your breakthrough isn't limited by God's willingness to give, it's limited by your willingness to receive. Your miracle isn't constrained by heaven's supply, it's constrained by your capacity to pour. This Wednesday, you have a choice. You can keep waiting for confirmation, or you can start creating vessels. You can keep demanding evidence, or you can become the evidence. You can keep asking God to prove himself, or you can prove your faith. The widow's story doesn't end with her getting just enough oil to pay her debts. She got so much oil that she had to tell her son to stop bringing jars because there weren't any left. She went from poverty to prosperity, from desperation to abundance, from crisis to calling, all because she was willing to pour first. What will you pour today? Forgiveness? Your story? Generosity? Obedience? Type in the comments. I will pour. God will fill. Because here's what I know about this Wednesday. It's not waiting for you to get ready. It's waiting for you to get moving. And the moment you start pouring, heaven starts multiplying. The question isn't whether God will show up. The question is, will you? Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred hour together, I want you to remember 3 eternal truths that will carry you through this Wednesday and beyond. First, remember that divine timing is never about your readiness, it's about God's faithfulness. You don't have to feel prepared for what's coming, you just have to be available. Wednesday isn't asking for your perfection, it's asking for your presence. Second, remember that miracles begin the moment you pour, not when you see evidence. The widow's oil multiplied as she poured, not before. Your breakthrough is activated by your obedience, not by your certainty. Faith moves first, then the mountain follows. And third, remember that you were chosen not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. Every tear you've cried, every prayer you've whispered, every moment you've held on when letting go seemed easier, all of it has been preparing you for this very moment. But I need you to know something that goes deeper than any message I could ever preach. You are not walking this journey alone. Even when your faith feels fragile, even when Wednesday feels overwhelming, even when you can't see the oil multiplying, God is still working. He's still moving. He's still orchestrating divine appointments and opening doors you didn't even know existed. And you have a community here, thousands of chosen ones, who understand your struggle, who've walked through their own wilderness seasons, who are praying for breakthrough alongside you. We're not just viewers watching a video, we're a family believing for miracles together. So let me ask you this. When you wake up this Wednesday morning, will you look for evidence of God's love, or will you become evidence of His love? Will you wait for the oil to multiply, or will you start pouring? Now, let me pray over you with the authority of someone who has seen God's faithfulness for 5 decades, who has watched Him turn ashes into beauty, mourning into dancing, and ordinary Wednesdays into divine disruptions. Father God, I place my hands on the shoulders of every chosen one listening to these words. Some of them are crying right now, feeling the weight of dreams deferred and promises delayed. Some are battling fear, wondering if they've missed their moment. Others are standing at the edge of breakthrough but afraid to take the next step. Lord, I ask you to flood their hearts with supernatural peace right now. Let them feel your presence in this very moment, not as a distant God watching from heaven, but as a loving Father sitting right beside them. Breathe courage into their lungs, wisdom into their minds, and unwavering faith into their spirits. For those facing financial struggles, open doors of provision that only you can open. For those battling sickness, release healing that flows like rivers of living water. For those walking through broken relationships, pour out restoration and reconciliation. For those who've lost hope, reignite the fire of divine purpose in their hearts. And Lord, as this Wednesday approaches, let them feel your hand guiding every step, your voice whispering direction in every decision, and your love surrounding them like a shield. Remove every obstacle that stands between them and their destiny. Silence every voice that whispers defeat. And let this be the Wednesday that changes everything. In the mighty name of Jesus, the one who turns water into wine and makes all things new.